Because I guarantee you, if I chase 2 rabbits, I ain't gonna catch neither one of them.
I believe multitasking is a
Yeah.
myth. We're not doing everything good. We're just doing
Yeah.
everything awful. And the more focused we can be, the better.
If everything's urgent, then nothing's urgent.
If you were to try to put on all of your hats at once, you would look ridiculous and it wouldn't be effective.
I need to be able to be the lowest heartbeat in the room and bring everybody down. And I can do that in a tactical situation, man. You give me an M4 and send me in a house, I'm good, I'm calm. My pulse is like this. But you put me in a room full of kids and I'm like, whoa. So when my 2-year-old says, Daddy, you're scaring me, that's a phrase that a 2-year-old should never say. And when he says that, I'm just like, man, what a jerk I am. In my mind.
Control promises security, but delivers anxiety. Today, I want to focus a little bit on helping you explore your current priorities and seeking that clarity on what God may be prioritizing for you.
Yeah, man, let's do it.
Good? Awesome. Before we get started, would it be okay if I open in prayer? Invite God in our time? Awesome. Great. Father God, I thank you for this opportunity to be fully present with my new friend, Corey. And God, I thank you that in this time we'll have clarity, we'll have courage to be fully ourselves. And Holy Spirit, we just ask that you would join us in this conversation. You guide us, that we step out of the way of trying to manufacture something in the natural, but we truly believe that there's going to be a supernatural shift and some insight in our session today. And Lord, I thank you in advance for my new friend, Corey, and all the things that you're doing in his life and in the life of his ministries and his businesses. And I pray all this in your great and mighty name, Jesus. Amen. Awesome. So I want to open our conversation again with this thought of, what do you feel God is highlighting as the main focus for you in this season?
Man, I feel like I'm at a point to where I have to make decisions because like so my kids I've got a lot of them, right? At home, I've got twin 7-year-olds, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 3-month-old. That is occupying quite a bit of my time. And I'm trying to balance that between being able to go out and spread the gospel in the ministry. And I had a moment the other day where they were all out of the house and I was just sitting on the couch, and one of those rare quiet moments where we don't get a whole lot of those in my house. And I was just thinking, I feel like I'm not doing the ministry justice because my wife, we homeschool our kids, and a lot of our time is consumed with that. And she's amazing, man. She's a rock star. She takes care of pretty much everything. And if I do have a ministry opportunity, then I'm able to go do that. And I don't have to worry about anything here. She's got it all covered. But when I am here, I have that dad guilt. Like, should I be out in the shop working on my knobs to sell to support the ministry? Or I know she's struggling at the house because the baby didn't really sleep last night, so she didn't get any sleep. So should I be inside with her, helping her? She hadn't said she wanted me to do that, but I feel like maybe I should be picking up on something that I'm not picking up on. And there's all this pressure of, am I doing the right thing? Should I be at working on the ministry, or should I be in home work, helping her? And she doesn't need my help. She truly doesn't need my help. But so I have this mindset of, where do I need to be? Am I at the right spot in the moment? And that's the biggest thing that I'm struggling with right now is the dad guilt. Should I be focusing on the ministry? Should I be out working on mission projects? Should I be putting a roof on somebody's house, or should I be at home helping Beth with all the kids and the chaos that's going on? So that's the biggest thing that I struggle with right now, is knowing what my priorities should be.
Definitely. First off, thank you for sharing. Obviously, a big pillar of my conversations that I have is vulnerability is our super strength. So you're already expressing that so quickly right off the bat. And some of the things I hear you mention there is you feel that tension of family and ministry and trying to balance it all, and not doing your ministry justice, and thinking you've got this dad guilt. Super relatable. All the things you're saying is super relatable, and I'm sure not only myself but those that are going to listen to our conversation are going to relate to that. And I'm curious, when you get into this, when you have this state of mind and you go down this path of thinking, where do you feel like it comes from?
I think so. Spiritual warfare is real, right? We can agree on that.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's a big part of it. because if the devil,
For sure.
he likes to play games, and making you feel inferior is one of the games that he likes to play, especially
Mhm.
with me, because that's something that I struggle with. I want to succeed. I'm a driven person, and anything that I do, I want to do well, and I don't fail
Yeah.
well, if that makes sense. I try to do everything that I do to the best of my abilities, including being a dad. And when I feel like I'm not measuring up, then I just get in this my self-talk loop. It just goes in the tank, man. And I feel like a lot of that comes from the devil, the enemy, man. He's trying to attack me, especially when my ministry, we have a high. I'm somewhere and we have a very fruitful weekend. I'm able to pray with a bunch of people, or maybe I'm able to share the gospel with somebody and they give their life to Christ in that moment. And then I could just see the transformation happen. And
Yeah.
like sometimes you're talking to people and you share the gospel with them and you're like, that really, I don't think they got it. But then there's that moment
Oh,
when somebody got it and you know that their life's about to change. And those moments, I feel like after I have that high, is when I have the lowest of the lows. After that moment, it's past.
mm,
And that's when I feel I get home and Bess had a hard weekend. And yes, she supports what we do. And the kids pray for us when we're gone and help daddy to have these opportunities to share. And these are the things that they ask for when I'm not here. And they're little, so they really don't understand. They're still upset. Why aren't you here? Where are you at? But they
mhm.
understand that I'm out sharing the gospel, but they're not quite old enough to understand exactly what that means yet. So a lot of my
Yeah.
time comes after I've been somewhere and had a great success. Then when I get back home and I just start hearing about the rough time my wife had, my son was acting crazy or whatever, it's after that, man, am I doing this right? Do I have my priorities straight? Or in seasons where, like for right now is a prime example. I've got Christmas orders because I make custom knives. That's how one of the ways that I support the
Uh-huh.
ministry. And I've got some people that have placed some orders, and then I have a Christmas show coming up next weekend, and I'm trying to get ready for that. So that's keeping my mind occupied because I'm a one-track mind person, right? Because I
Uh-huh.
guarantee you, if I chase two rabbits, I ain't gonna catch neither one of them. So I have to
Oh,
be
yeah.
focused on what I'm doing. And that's another thing that I'm guilty about too, that I think the devil uses to his advantage, is the fact that I'm not able to multitask and I don't even try. It's to the point where if my wife knows if I'm not looking at her in the face, then I'm not listening to her. If we ain't eyeball to
Yeah.
eyeball, I ain't hearing nothing she says. She's navigated that with grace, and still frustrating. But anyway, so I think it's spiritual warfare, man. And a lot of it comes
Yeah.
from my driven personality that I want to succeed. And we could talk about generational and all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff, right? My dad, he did the best that he could, but I could have won the world 5 times over. And if man, you should have done that on Tuesday. Good job. It would have been better. I did it on a Wednesday. So that was the kind of deal so I was okay, but I
Yeah.
never was quite. And so I have that I tried to battle with as well from my past. There's a lot of things I think that contribute to that mindset.
Definitely. And one thing you mentioned too is the idea of not trying to multitask, and I think that's great because I'm in the camp of I believe multitasking is a
Yeah.
myth. We're not doing everything good, we're just doing
Yeah.
everything awful, and the more focused we can be, the better. And so I'm curious, as you mentioned being wired this way, I can relate to and there and I'm curious, so say you had that great time of ministry, you're coming off that high, and you're going back to reality with your family. Do you find it hard to transition out of your focus? Like, you had such a great time, do you have trouble shifting the focus now to the family now that you're in front of
Absolutely,
them?
man, because I'm thinking, "Man, that was awesome. How can I do it again? I wanna replicate that." And I'm not replicating
Uh-huh,
it this coming weekend, so I'm not doing enough, and that's important because 'cause I'm doing kingdom work, so I need to do all this stuff has a sense of urgency, and the thing that I've learned is if everything's urgent, then nothing's urgent. So that's why I've had to understand that if I was out beating the bushes, because I do mobile forging demonstrations where I go and give my testimony and present the gospel while I forge a knife and that
uh-huh,
type of stuff, and if I'm out away from the house doing that every weekend, it would be too much. Yes, people would
definitely.
be meeting the Lord in different ways. Yes, people would be hearing the gospel. Yes, that's kingdom work. Yes, that work is important. But the thing that I have to keep in my mind is my most important work is on the inside of my threshold, not on the outside of my threshold.
Mm,
So
yeah,
if I can do
that's
everything
good.
for the kingdom on the outside of my house, but if I come home and I'm a jerk, or if I come home and I don't have any gas left in the tank for my family,
Uh,
then when I get standing in front of Jesus, he's gonna be like, bro, what did you do with
come
what I
on.
gave you? And yes, the ministry is important. Yes, sharing the gospel is important. But if I don't do it on the inside of my threshold, then that's the problem. That is a huge problem. So I have to remember that I can't spend all of my energy and all of my effort in the ministry, even though the ministry is a gift from God. It is what I'm supposed to be doing. My calling is to share the gospel, but I got to start with my family. And that is
Come
hard
on.
for me to remember when I should be more excited
Come on.
about coming home, reading a Bible story with my kids before we go to bed, praying before we go to bed, doing our liturgy that we have, that I tell them every night that God loves them
Mhm.
and that who loves you more than me? And they'll tell you God does. And that's where my most important work it is. And I have to keep reminding myself of that because I'm bad about going and being great in the ministry, great at public speaking, doing all these things for people outside, doing all these mission projects, fixing all these houses, and then being so run down when I get home that I don't have energy to get on the floor and wrestle with my boys. Like they need
Yeah,
that energy from me.
yeah.
So I got to be real careful to balance that. And that's what the other day when I was sitting on the couch, I'm in a situation to where I'm able to do that. And if I don't make that a priority, then I'm going to lose it because it'll be gone tomorrow.
Definitely.
And they won't want 2 and 4. They're not going to want to wrestle with me when they're 13, 14 years old because they're going to have their own things they want to be. So
Mhm.
I need to be intentional about building that foundation with them now because once they're grown and they're running around, they're doing their thing, they're out of the house or whatever, then my priorities could change. But right now, I've got to remember that
Mhm.
my priorities are inside the house, not outside the house. And and that's difficult,
Definitely.
man. It's
Eh,
difficult.
yeah, it's definitely difficult. I wanna help you reframe it out of difficult to looking at it as an opportunity for growth there,
Yeah.
because you recognizing it is something to be encouraged, because I think us parents, us dads that have that thought in our mind, "Are we doing enough? Are we being present enough?" I feel like we wouldn't have that thought if we weren't already doing a great job. So, as I wanna encourage you that you're probably doing a lot better than you think you are, and at the same time, I'm curious, do you have I wanna look at it this way, okay, so I study modern applied psychology, and there's this idea in psychology called anchoring, and it's where we have a physical thing that we do that helps remind us of a new neural pathway, and I know it's probably a lot of crazy technical terms, but basically it says it's something to remind us to be where we're at right now in this aspect, in this thing. So what I like to look at it is I like to look at it as hats because I wear a lot of hats. I'm sure you wear a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
hats
yeah.
metaphorically. And it's that idea of if you were to try to put on all of your hats at once, you would look ridiculous and you wouldn't it wouldn't be effective. At the same point, it wouldn't be effective if you were wearing the wrong hat in the wrong
Yeah.
space. For instance, if you have your ministry hat on and you walk into taking care of your kids and your family, then your focus isn't there. So I want to challenge you when you find yourself in these spaces of you just came off of a huge ministry win or a big win with your knives or whatnot, and you're coming back home and you're in that moment, just take a moment before you really dive into being there and being fully present and almost picture it as taking off a hat and putting on a new hat. And that new hat is what's gonna help you have this tunnel vision for what's happening right now. And I'd be curious, I feel like that's one quick practical thing that you could do in this. But to keep the conversation going in this idea of growth, and I know you're in a big growth season, as you mentioned. When you consider all the growth opportunities, which one feel most pressing on your heart and why?
Hmm. Man, I feel like the biggest opportunity that I have right now is raising my kids. Beth and I, we both were medically retired out of the Army. So we
Mhm.
have the unique opportunity to be able to be at home with the kids. And that's what also allows me the freedom to do the ministry that I have. A lot of people have to work. They have to go to a 9 to 5, but we have structured our finances in such a way that, working at a 9 to 5 job is not a requirement for us. That's a huge blessing that if I don't capitalize on that, then in my mind, it will be an opportunity wasted. Because see, I have 2 older kids that
Yep.
are 27 and 24,
Mm.
and I was gone for most of their life. And I chose drugs over them when they were super little. And I did that for several years. And then in order to get away from the drugs, I joined the Army. So then I was gone for 10 years when I was in the military. I really lost a lot when it came to raising my older kids. And that's not a mistake that I
For
want to
sure.
repeat. And thank God, by His grace, we've repaired that relationship, and I have a great relationship with both of
Come
them
on.
now. But I just don't want to miss this opportunity that God has given me to be a dad. And that was one of the
Definitely.
revelations I had the other day when I was sitting on the couch, was like, look, man, this ministry is going to be here. And because I'm in my mind, because we've been doing the ministry for about 3 years. So
Yeah.
we went full time ministry because I was working at a concrete plant, and I was a concrete salesman for a
Mhm.
while, and it just wasn't. I knew it wasn't where I was supposed to be because God was calling me to the ministry.
For sure.
So I finally went full
Yeah.
time with that about 3 years ago, and we've grown quite a bit over the last 3 years. But the ministry is still pretty
Mhm.
young, and we've already sent teams to Honduras.
Right.
We do local mission projects around
Wow.
here. We got a guy just came back from Honduras. We support quite a bit of ministry opportunities and missions because our whole deal is to raise money to send people on mission trips and to enable people to serve.
Yeah.
So just to be able to do that is pretty incredible. But the opportunities like missions will always be there. There's always going to be
Yeah.
somebody that needs something. But my kids are only 4 once. They're only 7 once. They're only
Yeah.
5. You know what I mean? So I have to keep in mind that yes, the mission is important. Yes, the ministry is important, but my focus needs to be on raising these kids because the thing that I'm working on the most, if I could wave a wand and one thing in my life change, it would be
Mhm.
yelling. Because man, I get so frustrated because I'm like, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. Okay, stop screaming at the table, stop screaming at the table. Don't run in the house, don't run in the house, don't run in the house, and then boom, I just explode, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
told it is not. It's not good because my kids are like, and I don't want to be this big scary dad that uses intimidation tactics to get them to listen. And that's what I tell them. Look, dude, they'll be jumping around on the couch or acting crazy or whatever, and I'll say, look, I've told you 3 times not to do this. Do I need to yell at you for you to hear me? And that's what I've tried to start doing. And they're like, no, daddy. And then 5 minutes later, they're jumping on the couch or doing whatever. Kids are going to be kids, especially on cold days, rainy days when they ain't been able to get out
Uh-huh.
of the house. They got all this energy. And that was what I saw modeled for me. And I just do not want to pass that on to my kids, but I see it in them already. That's how they interact with each other, and that's how they interact even with their baby dolls.
Mhm.
If their baby doll's not doing something they're supposed to be doing, then
Yeah.
they're like yelling at them, and I'm like, because I'm trying to break this generational thing. So
Uh-huh.
if I could just change one thing, like that's what it would be, man, is my volume because I need to be able to be the lowest heartbeat in the room and bring everybody down. And I can do
Mhm.
that in a tactical situation, man. You give me an M4
Yeah.
and send me in a house, I'm good. I'm calm. My pulse is like this. But you put me in a room full of kids and I'm like, whoa. So it's a different kind of chaos. It's like
That's so funny.
it's not the kind of chaos I'm used.
That's real. And how many kids do you have?
Yeah, I
A
got
lot.
5.
5 at home. Yeah, I have 2. And I definitely can relate to where you're at. Man, I'm curious. So when you look at this idea of yelling, I wanna explore this a little bit. I feel like we might can find a
Let's
way
do it,
to
man. I
to
got
help
my
with
pen.
this.
If it looks like I'm
So
not paying attention, it's because I'm taking notes,
first
buddy.
perfect. Dude, I love that. Hey,
Yeah,
paper
that's right.
never forgets.
Yep.
I forget what I say, you forget what I say.
Right.
Paper, it never forgets. I'm so glad that you're being a
Yeah.
student in this moment because if we're not learning, we're not really growing. But I'm curious, what do you think triggers you to yell
Control.
the
I
most?
feel like
Like
if
if
I'm
you
out of
had to
control, man. And the thing is, I'm not a
mm,
big control freak, but I'm just like, okay, This could be bad. This could be bad. This is annoying. This is annoying. I hate repeating myself. I hate repeating myself. And then I'm just like, "Ugh," and I just explode because I've tried to research this in myself. What is it that causes me to do
Mhm.
this? And it's if I feel like the situation's out of control, or if I'm selfish, if I'm in a situation that I don't know how to deal with it exactly, or I don't know how to properly address. Like,
Mm.
for instance, my twin 7-year-olds are girls. There's a lot going on in a female's body, even at that age, right? That
Yeah,
I don't understand. So when
yeah.
one of them breaks down and is just having a meltdown for what I would think would be no reason, like her water spilled off the table or whatever, and then she just
Mhm.
screams out and runs and buries her head in a pillow in her room, and I didn't mean to do it. I'm so sorry. I'm just
Uh-huh.
terrible. I'm like, I don't even know what's happening right now. And that moment right there is when my
Yeah.
levels I can feel my blood pressure going up because
Mm.
I'm just like, this is a situation because I keep going back to tactical. That's the training that I had. That's where my
Uh-huh.
mind's at, right? So in a tactical situation, you
Yeah.
assert dominance by being the biggest, loudest, scary dude in the room, right? In most of the times, aggression is safer. In a tactical situation, aggression is usually safer. So if you're the
Yeah.
aggressor, then you're mostly in control, and that's how I approach my kids, and that is not effective because then they're
Yeah.
scared and they're
For
like
sure.
cowering down. And when my 2-year-old says, "Daddy, you're scaring me," that's a
Mhm.
phrase that a 2-year-old should never say.
Hurts.
And
Mhm.
when he says that, I'm just like, man, what a jerk I am in my mind. And then there goes the
Yeah.
negative self-talk. Oh, you're just like your dad.
Uh-huh.
You can't do this. What are you thinking? Blah, blah, blah.
Mm. Yeah.
So because I'll be honest with you, man, when we started having kids, I'm not a huge baby guy. Like, I'm not a big fan of young kids.
Uh-huh.
Like, give me teenagers. I'm heavily involved in my youth group at my church. I got you. You know what I'm saying? Teenage boys, we can get
Yeah.
out there and throw a football and wrestle and talk man stuff or whatever, and I'm
Right.
gold.
Yeah.
But you give me a
For sure.
baby to a little
That's tough.
bitty 7, 6, and it's tough because they can't communicate well. I can't communicate well.
What are your true feelings when you yell? Is it frustration, fear, feeling unheard, or something else?
Feeling unheard for sure, because a lot of times I
Mm.
get loud when I'm having to repeat myself for the 5th or 6th time. I feel like I'm justified because I've said it calmly. I've said it calmly. I've said it calmly. I've said it calmly. And then it just all comes out at one time. And so I've got to figure out a different communication style that my kids will be like,
Yep.
that's weird. Where did that come from? And because now I think the thing that's frustrating to me is that even my 2-year-old has been in that environment long enough to where they don't hear anything I say until I yell. Is that like they don't think I'm serious until the volume goes
Mhm.
up because that's what they're used to. And that's what gets their attention.
Yeah.
And that's what frustrates me the most is that I've
Uh-huh.
trained them to be that way. It's my fault. I get that. And I'm like, how do I
Yeah.
shut it off? And I'm
For
overwhelmed
sure.
by it, man, because I'm just like, and that's
Really.
why I started asking, like, do I need to yell for you to listen to me? And they say no. They say no, but then they go right back to whatever it was I'm asking them not to do.
For sure. I think another thing there is just like they learn to respond to that, they can learn to
Mm.
respond to the opposite. But again, it's gonna take constant reinforcement of the other. And I'm curious back to you and diving deeper into this. Have you ever felt maybe in the past like yelling was that only way to be heard or respected?
Sometimes, again, I'm 46 years old and I only did 10
Mhm.
years in the army. I wasn't a career guy, but the army it saved my life, man. It was the best job I ever had. I was
Yeah.
the best at that job than any other job I've ever been at. I was a good NCO. Sometimes it required yelling. A lot of times that's how you got people's attention. Is if you were the loudest person in the room, then that's how you got their attention. And
Mhm.
that's what I feel like I have to be because so here's the thing. With 5 littles at home, everybody wants attention. So they get louder to get louder than the next person, and then that person gets louder, and then this guy over here, he's throwing his mashed potatoes because nobody's paying attention to him, and it's just like our supper table is
Mhm.
straight chaos. It's frustrating. If you're trying to get a point across, people are acting crazy. If you're the loudest person in the room, then you get their attention. And I've
Yeah.
always been loud and had a boisterous voice and that type of stuff, but I remember even when I was in high school, I was the drum major for our band, and the band director would be trying to get them to
Uh-huh.
listen up and this and that, and the kids were acting crazy or whatever. So I would just yell out in the room, and it would be like dead silence. So if
Mhm.
you're the loudest person in the room, then you get the most attention. But I don't want to be the loudest person in the room. I want to be the calmest person in the
Yeah.
room at this stage in my life.
Yeah.
Because
Good.
it's not
Yeah.
required. We're not in a combat situation. It's not a life or death scenario where
Yeah.
you need to hear me or I'm yelling over whatever kind of noise so that you don't die. It ain't none of that. It's just we're just at the supper table. So I should be able to. It's a pretty low stress. Should be a pretty low stress environment. But it seems to me that's the most stressful environment that I could possibly be in is sitting at the supper
Yeah.
table with my kids acting crazy, screaming over each other and all that.
For sure. And I think that's probably like you mentioned, it can be a trigger for you because for so much of your life when you had the 10 years in military, you were tactical minded. You were like literally programmed to understand how to address a situation to the point where aggression was the best option. So now it's almost like you have to retrain your brain for civilian life, essentially. And it's even like you mentioned, like yelling often stems from that feeling of out of control. So you think if I yell, it's gonna put me in control, but usually just more
Yeah.
chaos, right? So I wanna encourage you to shift out of that reactive to more of a proactive mindset. And I want us to practice, and you can even practice this in future ideas. It's what I like to call gnat killers, NAT, gnat killers. And basically, there's these things in our mind called negative automatic thoughts. And obviously, we talked about spiritual warfare. It's a lot of that. Like, we have so many thoughts being bombarded into us where you might get the thought of, they never listen until I yell. That might be the thought you have, but in that moment, recognizing it and then replacing it with the thought, "I can communicate calmly and still be heard." And it's over time, you doing that and retraining your brain, you'll see a shift into that. And another I'll just give you these 2 quick practical tools. So there's that one, which is the gnat killer. I picture it like the little gnats that are in our ear buzzing around, and if we just smack them and then literally replace that with the positive thought. And another form is a thing that I like to call the emotional reset tool, and it's that idea of a calm pause. So taking that deep breath, stepping away if you need to, and this has even helped me in my own life, like when I'm ready to just go postal on my 4-year-old, I've learned to say, "Alright, I need to take a minute," and I'm like, "Listen, bub, I'm gonna take a step back and I'll be right back." And it's funny because over time, me modeling that, he's had some moments where he had this huge aggressiveness in him, and he was like, "I need to take a
Yeah.
walk." And it's beautiful to see it modeled. So it's that idea, and then you can also, tie it to an affirming scripture, like, you could think of, like, Proverbs 15:1, where it says, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." Yeah, that's Proverbs 15:1, and that would be a good like I mentioned earlier with those mental anchors, the more of those that we can reinforce the positive, then we'll start to see our brains gravitate towards the positive instead the negative. How does that sit for you so far? I know
Oh,
we're
no,
long.
man, you're speaking my language, man. I'm part of a group called the Dad Age Alliance. I don't know if you've ever heard of them or not, but it's a mastermind of
Nice.
dads and businessmen, and they talk about what you
Mhm.
focus on grows. And
Yeah,
we do I am statements. And one thing that I've kept repeating to myself is I am patient and I am calm. And that's this and I've tried to start meditating in the morning just when because I
for
get up
sure.
at 5:30 because if I don't, man, once the kids are up, that's a wrap. It's chaos till bedtime. So if I don't get up that early, I
Uh-huh.
don't get my gym time in. I don't get my scripture read. I'll make a video every day called Hot Mess Discipleship, and I don't get that done. And so
For
if I
sure.
don't get up that early, I don't get that time. But I'm trying to. force myself into just being still and just sitting
Yeah,
and being
that's good.
quiet. And I get monkey mind real bad where I just start, my ADD kicks in and I'm just like, what do I need to
Uh-huh.
do? So I'm going to
Yeah,
try. No, let me rephrase that. I am going to
there we go.
put this Proverbs 15:1. I wrote it down right here. I'm gonna put that in my mind and take a minute because there was so I did a little bit of a guided meditation not too long ago, and it was because I thought I needed to be in a scenario where it was complete silence, where I could completely focus and just listen to my
Mhm.
breath and focus on my breath and all that kind of stuff. But this particular one was notice the sounds that are in the room. And it was dead silent
Yeah,
in here. So I was like, okay, this ain't working. So I went to the gym and I did that
yeah,
session at the gym, and you could hear the barbells clanking and the people talking and the music and this and that. And it was like, just notice the sound. You don't have to, it doesn't require you to have any sort
mm,
of reaction. You can't change the sound. You can't
that's so
change
good.
where it's coming from. You can't, and once it happens, once it's over, you can't make it happen again, that particular sound in that
Yeah,
particular way. So it was just a guided thing where, bro, you ain't in control no matter what. And that was, and I came
so
home that
good.
night and my little one, man, she's 3 months old and Beth is nursing. So Beth is her favorite person on the planet. And I can't do much with her at all. It's getting better, but at that point in time, this was about a month ago, she only wanted her mama. And anytime I was holding her, she was screaming. But I was laying in the bed and Beth handed me to her. She was getting ready to go to bed and she just said, "Can you hold her for a little while?" So I did, screamed the whole time. But I was calm because it was fresh in my mind that, look,
Mhm.
yes, this noise is annoying, but it's just a noise. Like it doesn't require me to
Yeah,
react. Like I don't have to respond to what's going on in my environment right now. I just have to notice it, realize that it's there, and then I get the opportunity to choose, like you said, respond instead of react. No, proactive instead of reactive. I was
yeah,
proactively
yeah.
thinking about there's nothing I can do about this. So what's the point in letting it get into my emotions? That's a big thing. This emotional reset tool, Proverbs 15:1. I'm gonna put, and that's the thing. That's another thing that's frustrating is I have the head knowledge, man. I just got to get
Uh-huh,
it into my habit loop, man. And
for sure,
but this conversation has been great because I've got notes
definitely.
and things that, because it takes me a while. I'm not always the quickest on the uptake, man. Repetition is
Mm.
good for me.
I wanna encourage you with that. Like you just said, you're not always the quickest. Speed isn't always the answer,
I'm right.
and
Yeah.
that's hard for us. That's hard for us. I'm right there with you. Most of my life, I felt like I needed to do it yesterday. And just I'm like you, I'm wired for high achieving, high performing, and one time I felt so strongly in my spirit, I felt like God was telling me to slow down, to speed up,
Mm.
and that I could become more by doing less, and that's been a huge journey for me. And I can say now I'm not perfect at it, but I'm a
Yeah.
lot better at it, and it comes from what you just said, and I wanna encourage you again that you've started to put it into practice. Like that meditative practice, you're already seeing results, and I encourage you to keep doing that because even when I mention things like being present where you're at, that meditation over time, that habit is just gonna flow out of you. You're gonna be in a moment of chaos again with your kids, and you're gonna have the opportunity to yell at them, or you're gonna be aware of the sounds around you, and you're gonna start shifting out of that idea of control, man. I heard it so great. My pastor was on a spoke a message this past Wednesday, and she was just talking about the idols that a lot of times our heart
Mm.
gravitate to, and one of them was control. And I don't find it coincidental that we're
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
control in our conversation. And it's funny because it's even when she was mentioning in her notes, like that idol is thriving on perfectionism, micromanaging, the fear of uncertainty. And you think that control promises security, but delivers
Mm.
anxiety. And that thought, and that's something that she said, and it's that thought of when we are trying to control things in our own power instead of relying on God to control it, then we think we're gonna get security by blowing up and yelling on our kids and getting the respect we want, but really it just delivers more anxiety and leads to broken relationship and all those things, and I think it's so interesting that you mentioned that. And again, I wanna encourage you that you're doing the work. A lot of people, especially as men, we can get into these spaces of thinking we've got it all
Yeah.
figured out, that we've got it, we're good, we don't need any coaches or mentors or brotherhoods to tell us what to do, and that's the moment that we got it
That is
all wrong.
completely the
We have
opposite of
nothing
what
figured
is
out.
true. Yeah, because that's the thing that I've noticed, man. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No,
That's
no,
one
you're
thing that
good,
I've
go
noticed
ahead.
about this Dad Edge deal, man, is we have an accountability call every Monday, and man, just the guys in that group hold me accountable, and it is inexplicable how much difference that makes. Just that right there, being
Yeah,
accountable to another person. And the thing is
nice.
we got to put our pride aside because if we are in a group, then there's like unspoken, maybe sometimes even a spoken covenant that I'm giving you
Mhm.
permission to speak into my life. Which means
Yeah,
when you do that, I can't get my feelings hurt. Like
uh-huh.
when you call me out on my
Yep,
nonsense, because
it's
we all
facts.
got nonsense. Oh my,
Oh,
don't
yeah,
get that twisted, man. I know
facts.
you know that. Yeah,
Two
I know
hands
you know
raised.
that as well as I do, man. We all got nonsense. So we
Yeah,
can't get upset when we give people permission to speak into our lives when they call us out on it. But that's the thing. We need to surround ourselves with men. We need to surround ourselves with men
yeah,
that aren't afraid to
yeah.
rough talk us if we need it.
Well,
And man, don't sleep
that's so
on.
good.
And I know you know this, but I'm saying that
Come
for
on.
the audience, whoever's listening to this, don't sleep on
Uh-huh.
accountability. Don't sleep on a
Come
partner
on.
that an accountability partner that's going to call you out on your nonsense. Because if you ain't got that in your life,
Yeah,
that is a huge disservice. That's part of discipleship. That's
come on.
biblical. We need that because we ain't supposed to be doing this
So
in a vacuum, man. It takes a community to raise our kids. It takes a
so good.
community to raise us. It takes a community. If we're not in community, then we ain't doing it right, man. That's just bottom line.
Big facts. Talk to him, Corey. Tell him. Man, I wanna I've loved this whole conversation, and I wanna be mindful of our time so we both get the most out of it. So as we shift into the ending of our conversation, I wanna use a tool I like to call the E2A, which is the experience to action. So we've had all this experience to action, and another way that I like to put it is principle into practice. We've had a lot of principle talk. Now I wanna look at how we can turn these principles into action. So I've just got 4 pretty simple questions that I wanna go through that kinda frame us in a way of action moving forward. So as my phone tripped out as I pulled up my notes. Give me 1 second.
It's probably my presence. I have that effect on technology.
Oh, that's so funny. Let me pull it up real quick.
We can't keep a printer working in my house, man. I don't know what the deal is. I'm gonna go Office Space on
Oh,
everyone that
man,
have.
that's alright, here we go. There it is. So it's 4 different parts. The first one being insight. And the question is, what did you learn from this experience today, and which ideas are most useful to you?
Man, you know what? Control promises security, but produces anxiety.
Mm,
That's
that's good.
gold. That's money right there, man. That is money.
Yeah,
So I
money.
am
Yeah,
I am going to use that ERT, the emotional reset tool, and that's what I'm gonna tell myself right after I get through saying Proverbs 15:1. I'm committing
I
that to
love that,
memory,
dude.
man. I'm making that a vow to you and everybody that's hearing me. I wanna have that memorized in a week.
Definitely. Dude, I love it. And you're literally answering my next question. That was my next question. What opportunities are available for you to implement these insights? And it sounds like you've got your
Yeah.
implementation, you've got your emotional reset tool, and you've got the proverbs, and then you've got the statement there about control. So that's yeah, that's your very tiny step to take. That you just go through all 4 steps. I love it. You're ahead of the curve there. Perfect. So yeah, so you're planning on
Yeah,
doing that
man.
this
I'm about to put this I'm gonna make a voice memo in my phone, and I'm also gonna have notes, and I gotta write stuff out to get it in my mind too. Memorize that saying, set control promises security, but uh, produces anxiety. And I'm gonna say that right after I get through quoting Proverbs 15:1.
Come on, dude. I love it. I love it, Corey. Now, before we wrap up in the call, I wanna ask, is there any way that I can support you or help you in this?
Man, that's a great question, man. Obviously, prayer is the most that we can do for somebody. I hear people say, praying is the least I can do. Man,
Definitely.
prayer is the most that you can do. That's what like, I wear this shirt around. It says, "How can I pray for you?"
I love
And,
it.
that's one of our ministry shirts, and that's one of the things that we do big time in
Uh,
our ministry because prayer is powerful, man. So I would ask that you pray for me, man. And I would ask any listener that's out here, man, to pray for me because I've got the teenage years coming up. I've got boyfriends that I'm gonna
uh-huh.
have to navigate and chaos and all that. And
Oof.
what I'm trying to do right now with my kids is I'm trying to build a foundation for a healthy, strong table. And what I mean by that is when the kids
Mm,
are gone
love
and they
that.
make their friends, like I want our house to be the place that they come to. I want our
Come
table
on.
to be strong enough to support the weight of all of those friendships and all of those people coming into our house. And even if we've got to build a bigger house, man, I just want to be able to
Come on.
accommodate my kids' friends, man, because there's in my ministry, I see so many kids because I do a lot of youth events, and there's a lot of kids
Mhm.
out there, man, that just don't have godly examples and they don't have godly homes. They
Yeah.
don't have like their parents are split up, and it's hard, man. It's hard for a kid to navigate that because there's so much stuff just competing for their attention, and most of it ain't good.
Yeah.
So if I can be a spot where my kids' friends want to be, a safe space for them to be here, that's what I wanna do, man. That's what I wanna do.
Come on. Man, Corey, I've
Me
loved
too,
this
bro. Me too.
conversation. It's been great. Yeah, and I feel like not only I know you've got some insight from it, I know I've gotten insight from it, so I definitely know that the people watching and listening have definitely gleaned from this. And with that said, I wanna address them. I want them to go check out the Yates Unicorn Ranch, check out Corey and what he's doing. You heard it there, and I can second that. Young men, specifically young men, need those godly men, father figures in their life. And I truly believe not only the work that Corey is doing, but also the work that we're doing over here at the Better Than Best Academy is very similar. Like we've got that heart for raising the next generation while also equipping the current generations to be better equipped to lead. Because as you mentioned, generational curses are real. And I feel like a lot of us 30 to 40-year-olds, I'm 31 myself, and it's great to see men doing the work of really getting emotional intelligence and leading where before we could just
Yeah,
yell it
yeah.
out.